Okay, it's great to see so many people. Wow, this is amazing. So this week's parsha is Tetzaveh. It starts with Ata Tetzaveh. You will command. God is talking to Moses, and he's telling him, you should command the children of Israel, and this is what they should do. They should bring you oil to light the menorah. This is going to be the lighting the menorah, and it's going to be a ner tamid, an everlasting light from the evening till the morning. We're going to talk about all of this because there's so much contained in this one sentence. So first of all, we have Moshe's yahrzeit, his birthday. Both his birthday and his yahrzeit. Yes, his birthday and his yahrzeit on Zayin Adar, which was just a few days ago. And that's why in this week's Torah portion is where we see Moshe's name is not mentioned, not even once. It's the only Torah portion, really, except for Devarim, which is the whole thing he's talking about it. But from when Moshe is introduced to us, it's the only Torah portion that doesn't have his name, the entire portion. It's God is saying, you should, but it doesn't say, you, Moshe, go and tell the children of Israel. And it's very interesting. Why is his name missing from the entire Torah portion? And the reason why it's missing is because Moshe had just done something. What did he do? He told God, remove me, erase me from your Torah. What? Moshe tell God to erase him from the Torah? How did that happen? Well, when Bnei Israel, when the children of Israel made the golden calf, the Egel, God wanted to destroy the entire nation, right? They had just witnessed Matan Torah. They just witnessed the most glorious occasion. And here, right after that, they're serving an idol. So God says to Moshe, forget this nation. Forget them. This is a nation that's rebellious. This is a nation that keeps on rebelling against me and doing all these terrible, terrible things. Instead, let me take you and make from you a nation. It'll just be you. And I'll build an entire nation from you. I'll destroy them all. And when Moshe heard that, he didn't say, oh, gee, that sounds like an interesting idea. Hey, that's like a really nice thing. He says, are you kidding? No way. You want to destroy the Jewish people? If you want to destroy the Jewish people, destroy me. Remove me. Erase me from this whole Torah of yours. This holy Torah, which Moshe knew the Torah, what it is. You want to erase the children of Israel? You want to erase the Jewish people? Erase me from this book. I want no part of it. And when he said this, God says the holy words of a tzaddik always come true in some way or another. That's why we have to be very careful with what we say. If we remember when Rachel said, whoever stole these trefim, when Yaakov said about Rachel, whoever stole these idols of Lavan shall die, she ended up dying soon after that, right? In childbirth. So whatever a tzaddik says, his words are holy, and in some way they come true. And they did come true. In this week's Torah portion, Moshe is erased from this entire week's Torah portion because his name is not mentioned there. Now let's think about this for a moment. Is this a rebuke for Moshe? Is this a punishment for Moshe? Because he said, oh yeah, God, you want to erase them? Well, you can erase me. Or is there something deeper here? So when we think about it, let's think about what Moshe was saying. Like, here's the Torah, the thing he gave his entire life for, the thing he was so excited about. He has an understanding of God like no other. But his love for the Jewish people was so strong. He says, God, if you want to punish the Jewish people, I want no part of it. You want to destroy them? I want no part of it. This is the ultimate leadership of a leader. To even say to God, and we say that in Judaism, we're of course we respect God, we're so reverent of God. But some of our leaders really took God to task, That's what we are, and that's what God wants. Because imagine if someone said that about your children. Imagine if someone said about your children and you said, excuse me? What are you saying? That is showing the greatest reverence to God, really, when we fight with him about his children. If someone does something to me and someone's going to fight about my children, fight to defend my children, that's the best friend that I'll have. Someone who treats my children well, and the opposite. You start up with my kids, forget it, right? Forget it. But someone who defends my kids, even when they're wrong, you just got my support for all times, right? And that's what Moshe's saying to God. Moshe's showing his tremendous love for the Jewish people, and he's showing what a true leader he really is. You want to destroy the Jewish people? Destroy me. Forget about me. I'm not in this. I'm out. No way. Destroy the world. I don't care. I'm not here. I'm not part of this. So Moshe was really uncovering his essence, who he was, what kind of leader he was, who he was as a person, what kind of greatness. This is greatness, that he's able to say to God, you want to destroy them, destroy me. And that's why we really see that this Torah portion is, in a sense, showing the greatness of Moshe. So Moshe's name is not in the Torah, in this week's Torah portion, but his essence is. Now, when we talk about a person, we all have names. My name is Chana, right? And Chana, maybe I have some characteristics of my name, maybe not. You know, you name a child when you look at the baby's face. I know I always wanted to name my children, you know, you always think of the names before the baby's born. And then once the baby's born, it's like the whole thing gets tossed. Like, no, she's not that. No, she's not that. No, that's not her personality at all, right? You're looking at this little baby and you say, no, right? There's something about the name that relates to the person. And there's something even deeper, though, than the name. Because our name is a signal of who we are, but there's something deeper even than what our name is. And that's our essence, who we are, that can't be named. It can't even have a name. You can't even name it because it's so deep. It's deeper than that. And that's what God is calling Moshe in this week's Torah portion. He's saying, you. I'm calling you. Your essence. I'm not calling you Barbara, because Barbara represents how we know Barbara, right? From the outside, how she looks, how we look at her, what we think of her, what characteristics we think. But Barbara is so much deeper than all those things, than even her qualities, her characteristics, how we look at her, her personality. There's more to her than Barbara. There's her, who she is. And that's what this week's Torah portion has. It has Moshe's essence. God is calling to Moshe, you. You can't even encompass it in the words of Moshe, but God is actually speaking to Moshe. So by Moshe's absence in this week's Torah portion, he's really more present than ever, because God is showing who Moshe was and why was he taken out from this week's portion, because of his tremendous love for his people. And you see this sometimes in life, when someone is missing. I mean, obviously I'm thinking about my father. Sometimes when someone is missing, you're feeling their presence even more. And that's really the case for somebody like a real teacher or a real person of presence. When they're gone, you feel their influence even more. That's when you know how real they were. That's how you know how meaningful they were. That's how you really experience the principles that they lived for. I mean, you were just talking about the Rebbe, and how you feel about the Rebbe. Same idea, like when he's gone, even more so. The fact that he's still so alive, that she's going to the island, she's thinking about, what this individual taught her and what it means to her, shows the essence of the person. Might not physically be here, but their teachings, their what they stood for, what they encompass in their lives, their signature, what they really mean in their lives, is here even more so. And that's what we see with Moshe in this week's Torah portion, how he's here even when he's not here in this Torah portion. He's here even more so, because we see his tremendous love for the Jewish people, which is the essence of what he was, is even more so here because of what he said. So that's an important part to remember in the Va'ata Tetzaveh, and you should command the children of Israel. So this is God speaking to Moshe, Va'ata Tetzaveh, you should command. And the word Tetzaveh, which is the same word as mitzvah, means command or commandment, like a mitzvah is a commandment. but it's also something much more. It's also a bond, a connection. And the deepest way that we bond with each other is through mitzvot, through this spiritual connection. Because we can bond with each other in terms of activities that we do, in terms of talking that we do, conversations that we do, going to lunch together and, spending time together. And that's a certain level of bonding. But the deepest bonding that we can have with another person is when we bond for something spiritual, something that is a spiritual pursuit, something that we're both involved in an activity together to create something greater than ourselves. And that's what mitzvah means. It's our connection to God and to each other. And so God is telling Moshe, you should bond with the people, you should command them, and you should bond with them by telling them to prepare this oil, which is a crushed oil. It's kassis, it's this crushed oil that they're going to give for the menorah. And interestingly, this crushed oil that they're going to give for the menorah is going to be this ner tamid, this everlasting light that goes from the evening till the morning. Now let me ask you, if it's an everlasting light, how is it going from the evening till the morning? An everlasting light is something that's everlasting, right? So what this is really telling us, what it means for everlasting light, the words mean everlasting light. It's really telling us it's a continual. Every night they're going to be doing it, every night till the morning. But the words everlasting light is teaching us something about what our job here in this world is. Our job here in this world is to bring goodness, to bring Torah, to bring mitzvot, to bring this spirituality to this world. So our job here is to bring this light in the night, from the night till the morning, right? It's a world that we see that feels so overwhelmingly dark. It's nighttime. We feel it here, all the more so. We feel it now in our situation. We feel it now with what's going on in Israel. We feel it now because everyone's going through their own things. So it's nighttime. And our job is to bring this light, to bring this light of joy, happiness, meaning, purpose. That's our job. That's our job in this world. That's our purpose here in this world. To bring the light from the night till the morning. But we have to remember that even though this world is a very physical world and it's a very finite world and it's very temporary, the light that we're bringing is a ner tamid. It's an everlasting light. You might think that what you're doing, this good deed that you just did, whether it be tzedakah or a learning Torah class, or a good deed that you did to your friend, or Shabbos candles, or kashrus, or going to the mikveh, or any of the things that we try to do, we might think, oh, it's just one act. It's one thing that I did. Don't make that mistake. This is an everlasting light. This is an eternal light. Every mitzvah, every spiritual act that we do is not something that's fleeting or temporary. We're bringing eternity into this physical reality. That is our job. That's what it means when it says, you light this light. This is a metaphor for all the light that we're bringing to this world. Bring your light to this world. Do this mitzvah, this bonding, this commandment that is bonding us to God, bonding us to our soul, bonding us to each other. Every mitzvah that we're doing bonds us to God, to each other, to spirituality, but it also brings this eternal light into this physical reality. That is the power of every single mitzvah that we do. Let's contemplate that for a second. Everything that you do, every mitzvah that you do, is bringing an eternal light that nothing and no one could ever extinguish. It's for all eternity. That's what a good spiritual thing does. That's pretty awesome, okay? Okay, every single time you put a penny in the pushka or $1 in the pushka, every time you light Shabbat candles, every time you eat kosher, every time you do something nice to your friend, you say a nice word, you uplift somebody, You've just done an act of eternity that stays forever, even in this physical world, because it goes beyond this physical world. Okay, so that is what Moshe is supposed to say. He says to the Jewish people to bring this oil in order to do this light, to light up this menorah. And this menorah refers to every mitzvah that we do, brings light, it brings actual spiritual light to this dark world from the evening to the morning. It creates a morning from the evening. It creates spirituality, a spiritual light that lights up the darkness of the times that we are in and lights up our own inner darkness. Okay, and you know, sometimes you're feeling very, very down, and you feel very, you know, like that, like, life is just so overwhelming. And you do something positive, you do this mitzvah, and suddenly you feel like something's been lifted up from you. You know, you're feeling so down and this is what psychology says. You're feeling so down and alone, go do some good deed for a friend. And guess what? After you think, in the times that I'm feeling my lowest, I don't want to go do a good deed for somebody. Let them do a good deed for me, right? No. Do a good deed for somebody, suddenly this big, heavy oil that you've been carrying has been lifted. That's what a mitzvah does. That's what a good thing does. And this is in any case and in every situation, whatever situation you are in. You don't feel like praying. You feel like, now, come on, I have so much that I'm worried about, or so much to do, or so much to think about, or so much to accomplish. I can't pray now. Those are the times that you need to pray the most, right? And start with a little bit, and suddenly this all that you're carrying just becomes a lot lighter. That's the power, the eternal power of a mitzvah. And that's the power that each and every one of us has. So this is what God is telling Moshe to tell the Jewish people. And what is he asking them to bring? He's asking them to bring oil that's crushed. The menorah was lit from oil that was crushed. It was the first drops of the oil that were used in the lighting of the menorah. The rest of the oil that you take from the olive oil, you know, if you squeeze the olive, the first few drops were the most, the purest, and those are what was used to make this light. And anything else was not used for the menorah. It could be used for other things. It could be used for some of the sacrifices that would be made from the flour and oil, but it could not be used for the menorah. The menorah needed the purest oil. This also tells us something about our own lives as well, because everything in Torah is always right. There's always so much depth and so much meaning to it. So what is it teaching us? It's teaching us kasus lama'or. When you are crushed, that is when you shine the most. And it's kind of hard to digest that, yes. But it's very true, right? We don't want it to be like that. But it's through the crushing, it's through the difficulties and the struggles in life that we go through that we become the greatest people that we are. It's through that crushing and that difficulty, that crushing, sometimes hardship, that we can become our greatest self, that we can become the greatest person that we're meant to be. So when you are going through something, know that the thing that you're going through is not going to break you. It's there because you are going to be transformed into the greatest person that you can be. That's what the difficulty is there for. Not that we want any of the difficulties, not that we ask for any of the difficulties. We certainly want to become the greatest person without the difficulties, and that's what we pray for. And perhaps we can even do that, become your greatest self, and you don't need to have any of the crushing burden of the hardship. But when we look at a hardship, we have to know the hardship is not going to be something that's going to break me. It's going to be the opposite. It's going to make me. It's going to make me into the greatest, because it's going to reveal the atat. It's going to reveal the you that is not you constricted by your personality and your talents and your outward appearance and all these things that we look at a person, but it's going to teach it's going to touch the very essence of who we are, the deepest essence of who we are, and make us into that greatest self. So, so that is what this Shemen Zayis, this pure olive oil that is crushed, is going to do. Now, on the other hand, when we are in a situation where, there are times, if you ever try to light a log for a fire pit or something, right? Okay, what happens if it doesn't catch on fire? What do you do?
Smoke.
Smoke. Okay, so how do you get it to catch?
You have to put
little pieces, or you can break it up into smaller pieces, and then it will catch fire. And that was actually last night's portion of the Tanya, which says that when a person is feeling that he isn't motivated, he isn't feeling this inspiration, he isn't catching on fire. You're not catching on fire. So what we need to do is kind of break those parts of ourselves that are too involved in the physical reality, that isn't involved in the spiritual reality. Break those parts of ourselves that aren't interested in the spiritual reality, that are blocking us from attaining our true understanding of what we want, what our soul wants. Break those parts of ourselves, and then we can become ignited. And when you are in a situation where you're trying to educate somebody or help someone become ignited, you always have to remember kasus lama'or, that you can only help them to, I wouldn't say crush them, but you can only open them up with the intention of bringing out their best qualities. So when you're breaking yourself as well, when you're talking about to yourself, and you're saying to yourself, I should have done this, or I'm not good at this, and you're trying to break yourself because you feel like, I'm so bad at this, and I'm terrible with that. You're only allowed to do that in order to shine. Don't do it to yourself just because you want to talk this negative self-talk about yourself. I'm so bad at this. I'm so bad. I should have done that better, right? Which we're always doing to ourselves. We're always telling us, no, or am I talking to the right? Yeah. Okay. We're always talking about all this bad self-talk to ourselves. Realize you can only do kasus. You can only crush yourself, lama'or. If you're crushing yourself in order to show how great you are, in order to show how much you can shine. So if your point is, I'm so bad at this and that, no. What did you do? You just put yourself down and you just made yourself feel smaller and worse, and you feel like worse and worse and worse, smaller and smaller. Don't crush yourself, or don't work on self-criticism unless you're doing it in a way that builds yourself up.
So you're exposing vulnerability.
Sorry?
When you're exposing your own vulnerability.
Yes.
And becoming open to that vulnerability and
Yes.
wanting something to lift you further.
Something to lift you further.
At least a ratzon to open you up.
Exactly. So only express that vulnerability is a good way of saying it, because vulnerability isn't shaming yourself or blaming yourself. But if your talk is self-blame or self-shame, that's no good. Like you can do it in a constructive way. You want to reconstruct your day so it's more constructive, great. Think about ways that you can do more in your day, that you can motivate yourself to be more inspiring and more inspired and more motivated. Sure. But don't do it in a way that's going to destroy yourself. Kasus lama'or. Crushed in order to light yourself. So
how do you say kasus?
Katit lama'or.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, I thought she was like, sorry, I thought you were saying something on the
Yeah.
first. Yeah, I thought also.
Katit, okay, Katit Lamar.
אוקיי, עכשיו זה בסדר.
Awesome, okay. So, open yourself up not to be negative about yourself, but open yourself up to the greatness that you can be. Because within each of us, you know, we were just talking about Moshe Rabbeinu, about Moshe, how he was the ultimate leader of the Jewish people. Not only was he the leader of the Jewish people, but we're told that there's a little bit of Moses in every one of us, right? You know the song, A Little Bit of Moses?
No?
Eighth day.
Oh,
Eighth day. There's a little bit of Moses in each one of us, meaning that every one of us has our neshama, and the neshama, our soul, has many, many different levels. There's actually 5 different levels. And the highest level, which is the Yechida, which is the one that's completely connected to God, that we're not usually in touch with. We're usually in touch with the lower parts of our soul, not the deepest, deepest part. But that deepest part of our soul really has a spark of Moshe Rabbeinu, a spark of Moses. In every generation, we have that in us. That spark of Moshe, that spark of our leader within us. And that allows us to achieve things that we never thought were possible. It allows us to really dig deep within ourselves and not put ourselves down because of it, but dig deep within ourselves and find that ma'ar, that light, that beauty, that inspiration, that motivation, that glory of who we are, because that is who we are as a Jewish people. So sometimes we have things that crush us as our nation, like we've just gone through so much crushing the last many, many weeks and months. I mean, since October 7th, we've been crushed as a nation. But that crushing has also brought out the ma'or, the beauty, the light, the goodness, the godliness of the nation. I mean, the godliness of the Jewish people, the godliness of every citizen, the godliness of our soldiers, you know, what they're going through, and the godliness of all of our people, how we feel so connected. Like it's us that are going through what they're going through, because we feel it. It's a part of us. This is who we are. And that's every situation that we're in. That crushing defeat brings out our strength as a Jewish people. Because we are not just this temporary thing that's here. We're living in a temporary world, but we are everlasting. We have that everlasting part within us. Just like the mitzvah is everlasting, we are everlasting. The neshama is everlasting. And even when a person disappears, when a person is gone, that everlasting soul, just like we see Moshe in this week's Torah portion, even more so, that everlasting message, that everlasting inspiration, the everlasting teachings are eternal and stay with us forever. And then the Torah portion goes on to the different clothing of the Kohen and the Kohen Gadol. And I just want to share a story, because we're going to end with this story, right? Because time is... Okay, so this is a story about clothing, okay? We know that clothing really makes the person, right? And sometimes you're wearing clothing, and you're in clothing that, I mean, the royal family will dress up in certain clothing because they're royalty, right? And that's what we see, the clothing of the Kohen and the Kohen Gadol when they were doing their service in the Mishkan or in the Beit HaMikdash, they had exact items of what they needed to wear. And each thing is obviously has very deep significance, which we're not going to go into today, but we realized that clothing really makes a person. In fact, I saw an interesting study about college students that were told to take an exam. And each of them were going to take an exam in their own room, their own little cubicle. And what they did is they took half the students, boys and girls, and they told half of the students to wear swimming suits. The girls were supposed to wear one piece, and the boys were supposed to wear just, I guess, the trunks. And they were going to write an exam, I think it was on mathematics, okay, in their own little cubicle. No one would see them in their swimming suits. No one except because they were in their own room. And the results were staggering. The boys who were wearing the swimming suits did about as well or maybe a little bit better than the boys who were wearing regular clothing.
Really?
Yeah. However, the women
No.
who were wearing the swimming suits did like 60% worse,
Yeah.
even though no one was seeing them, right? And the researchers came up with the result. They understood that women generally objectify themselves. And when they were wearing these swimming suits, even though no one was seeing them, they themselves objectified themselves. And therefore they did worse on the exam. I mean, we know this. This is obvious to all of us. Because as women, we know that when we dress, we feel the way that we're dressed, right? When we're dressed schlumpy and we feel like schlumpy. When we're dressed nicely, you put on a little lipstick and suddenly you're ready to go and you feel a little, okay, I got to do this. I got this, right? We know this. We know this is, so clothing definitely makes the person, but sometimes a person can find themselves in clothing that isn't really who they are. And do they have the courage to change? And I don't know if I ever told you this story, but I'm going to tell it to you again. This is a story of my father with the priest. Did I tell you this story? Okay.
You can say it again.
Okay. Because this is a story of somebody who was wearing clothing that really wasn't who he was. This is the story. My father, many, many years ago, was asked to speak in Buffalo, New York, in it was at a convention for different priests and ministers. And it's very interesting because we were just staying by a friend of mine in Toronto, and her husband was looking at a place to buy for a yeshiva. And he looked into Toronto, and Toronto was exorbitant expensive to buy it. And he saw this beautiful monastery, like with all these rooms and dormitories and everything in Buffalo, New York. And he's looking into doing this right now, to purchasing this building for his yeshiva, because it was like perfect for it, and it was huge. The kind of facility was something that was like unbelievable. But this was the place that my father spoke in many, many years ago. So my father was asked to speak in this place, and he wasn't sure if he should actually speak because it was different religions were there, and he wasn't sure should he be speaking for such a group. So he asked his uncle, whose name was Rabbi Chodakov. He was the main secretary of the Lubavitcher Rebbe. And he asked the Rebbe, and he said to him, he should go and speak, and he should speak about something that's universal for Jews and non-Jews alike. And so he decided to speak about tzedakah, charity, which is universal for everybody. And the Rebbe was actually very into non-Jews also giving charity, because this is an important thing. So what did he say about charity? He told a story. He told a story about many, many years ago. There was in Prague, there was this miser who never gave any money. And he was very stingy with any kind of donations. And the people were very frustrated because he was this very rich man and he never gave. He was so tight-fisted. So when the miser died, if some of you went into the trip to Poland, you might have heard this story. So when the miser died, the Chaver Kadisha, the burial society, decided to bury him in the part of the cemetery called Hektish, which is like the outskirts of the cemetery, where kind of the people that are not very respectable are buried. About a week or two after this miser died, there was this big tumult in Prague. Krakow or Prague? I'm not
I think it
sure.
was Prague.
Prague.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was definitely Prague.
Prague, right? Okay, so there was this big tumult in the city, and all the poor people came to the rabbi of the city, whose name was the Tosfos Yom Tov, Yom Tov Lipman, and they said to him, all these years, like for every week, we would get a delivery. Every Erev Shabbat, we'd get a delivery of meat and baking stuff delivered to our homes. And all of a sudden, without any warning, it stopped. And what are we supposed to do? So the rabbi called the butcher and the baker, and he says, what's going on? What happened? Why all of a sudden did you stop? And they told him, well, it wasn't really our money, but this was the money that was given to us by the miser that passed away. And he swore us to secrecy that we should never tell anybody about what we're doing, because the highest way of giving charity is when the recipient has no idea who the giver is. And in this way, no one knew, and really no one knew. When the Tosos Yom Tov heard that, he says, if this was who the miser really was, I want to be buried next to him. And if any of you went to Rabbi Krohn's tour in Europe, he actually shows where the miser, a friend of mine did it, and she took a picture, and she took a picture of the Tosos Yom Tov's big
I think they moved him also. Right?
Toaster?
Did they move him into the main part of the? I thought that's what the story.
well, that became the main
Yeah,
part.
right, yeah,
That
okay.
became the main part because this great rabbi was
Right.
then buried there. So this is the story that my father told over to this group of people. After he told the story, a man in the audience, a priest, asked to speak to him. And my father said he didn't want to be seen speaking like as if there's a whole discussion between a priest and a rabbi. He didn't like the graphics of it. So he said to him, you know what, I'm leaving in the morning, come to my hotel room. I'm staying overnight, and tomorrow morning I'm going back to Toronto. Come tomorrow morning in the morning before I leave, and I'll be happy to speak to you. The next morning, there's a knock on the door, exactly on the time, and there is standing the priest, who's very, very agitated, very, very upset. My father invites him in, and he says to him, Rabbi Shachat, please tell me that story that you said last night. So he repeats the story, and the priest is again looking he's pacing, he's looking so agitated. He says, tell it to me again. So my father says, I'm sorry, but my accent isn't going to get any better. He had a real sense of humor. I told you this, like, what do you want? So the priest says to him, okay, now I have a story to tell you. That man in the story, that miser in the story is really my ancestor.
Wow.
He's like, so my father says, that can't be. He lived a long time ago. He was Jewish, you're not. So the priest says, let me tell you a story now. During World War II, my father was a general in the U.S. Army, and he traveled abroad to Europe to fight. It was there that he brought back his war bride. They never told me that this war bride was Jewish. How do I know that? Because on her deathbed, and I grew up, as a good Jewish boy, right? He didn't know that, but what is a good Jewish boy interested in? Spirituality. So what did he learn? Christianity. He says, I learned I was very good. I became a priest, and I have a whole congregation. But my mother passed away prematurely, and on her deathbed, she called me and she told me, you should know that you're Jewish.
Wow.
And not only should you know that you're Jewish, but I want you to know who your ancestor is. And she told me the story that you said. Now, my mother at that time was already older. She was already sick. So I thought she was probably hallucinating. She was on strong meds at that time. I thought maybe she was just hallucinating the story. Wasn't really very clear. And I didn't, it bothered me for a while, but then I forgot about it. I figured it's just something that on her deathbed she was kind of hallucinating. But now, when you told me that story, and I know that there really is this person, I know this is really true, and this is who I am. He says, so what am I supposed to do? So my father gave him the number of the person who lived in his city, because he traveled to go to this convention. And he gave him his own number, and he said, you've spent so many years learning about Christianity, now it's time to learn about who you really are, and to really understand who you are. You're wearing these clothing that's not your clothing, these robes that are not your who you are. It's time to take them off and really discover who you are, to have the courage to see that. He left, the man left, he left, and the man seemed very, you can imagine, like his whole world had just fallen apart. He was very agitated, and my father never heard from him again.
Wow.
But years later, my father was in Israel on a trip, and he's standing at the Kosel, and he hears someone calling him, Rabbi Shochet, Rabbi Shochet. He turns around and he sees this man, completely religious,
Wow.
with children at his side.
Oh, wow.
And he says, do I know you? And he says, I'm that former priest you met in Buffalo.
Oh, my God. This is really
Very,
yes.
yes.
I got goosebumps.
And
Wow.
my father, we discovered that we are direct descendants of the Tosfos Yom Tov, that rabbi in the story.
Oh, wow.
So, or at
You
least
have
my
a
father is,
equals.
yes, yeah. So my father, who is this direct descendant of the Tosfos Yom Tov, met this priest who was a direct descendant of the miser,
Wow.
and at that moment changed the direction of history. So this teaches us that encounters are not just encounters, it's everlasting, right? Ner tamid, it's a ner tamid, it's an everlasting. We might think encounters in our own lives are superficial, and what does it mean? Encounters, mitzvah, bonding and commandment, connecting is eternal. Our job in this world is eternal. We are eternally here. What we do, every mitzvah that we do, can change eternity, can bring light into the darkness for all times. And we don't always see the result of a mitzvah that we do like this one. But we need to remember that every mitzvah that we do has that power, that everlasting power of changing life, creating a light from the darkness. And this is a light from the darkness that is everlasting. So with that, we can all decide to continue on in the mitzvot that we're doing and take on even more mitzvot with the understanding that every mitzvah has that power of revealing that.
Thank you, Hannah.